Now what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and start off with the ITIL4 overview and see how this is different from what we have been studying so far in the version 3. So now that we know that Exelos has started off with a new version of the ITIL, that is the ITIL4, and the transition from the ITIL4 to ITIL3 is in the process and will completely take place within the second quarter of this next month or the next year. So during this the time frame, what we are done is we sort or jotted down a few general points that are new or different from the ITIL4 and how they are different from the version 3 as well, so that you know what areas to currently focus on and which are of lesser importance to the respect of the examination when you are in the examination and when you see all the questions. So let's start off with some general points. So this version of ITIL4 is less particular and more than one. So there are three types of things, as you are aware that we're a lot of three types of things. We heard a lot of about that is the three types of thing in version 3, but version 4 doesn't actually cover those three types of things. So in fact they are more open to some definition, and the role has adopted a less specific or less on point approach with some definitions and the targets, and has given an overview, a holistic view of how the business alignment would be with IT in terms of the value deliverance through the services of the product that has been delivered. So the main focus of is on the definitions that we will be focusing on, and the roles. So which party is going to play which role is in this version. So we have to look at that, and how their activities, their responsibilities, and their associations with the other relevant stakeholders and the part of the work within the service value. So which we are involved in. So instead of having that specific focus on the definition, they are talking about the holistic view and two endpoint view, so that you know actually what all comes into play when you are delivering a service or a value as a service to the use of the customers. Moreover, they are more focused on the practices now instead of the processes that we have in the early which were placed earlier. So earlier there were 26 processes which have now turned into 34 practices, and they also have the function process module and the approach within them. So now not only have they been redone, but they have also eliminated some of them, have been dropped down, some of them been eliminated. So that's the idea behind the correlation of the ITIL within the Agile DevOps, Lean Prince 2, IT governance models such as the corporate 5 and the service standard of the ISO IEC, that is 20000 and 20001, are also overlapped within the ITIL framework. So not only have they been focusing on the services that have to be delivered by the service provider, but also some products as well. And the idea have been incorporated from the Lean DevOps, Corporate 5, the Prince 2, and the ISO as well. So we will see how these shape up the framework and of the ITIL for later. But for now, let's move ahead and see what it's on this presentation. So within the few different parts, as you can see in this slide on the top right, this arrow shows that these are some parts that have been modified, and some have been changed within the new parts. So the new content within this. So initially the ITIL version 3, that is the previous version that was in place. We had the 4 P's of the IT service management, that is the people, the partner, the products, and the processes. These have now been changed and to the 4 dimension of the IT services, and they are now called organization, people, partners, and suppliers, information and technology, value streams and processes. So the idea behind this difference is to ensure that everybody is up to the speed with how things have developed and how things have changed in the terms of the new course work with the ITIL4. So people are now organization, and the people, like I said, ITIL now talks about the holistic view, the organization of the organization, and the organization must come together as a unit with the people that they are making use of. So in the service, which is in the service delivery. So that is the actual value which is being delivered through the service that has been provided to them. So moreover, how these are engaged with the different partners and the suppliers through, let's say, different underpinning contracts, through service level agreements to operation level agreements within the departments of that organization. So that this is also a part which was previously known as just the partners, but now they have focused more on the partners and the suppliers, how they are going to go ahead and be engaging with them. So what missions will be translated to them, what sort of outcomes are they expecting of these partners and the suppliers, let's say a third-party vendors, so on and so forth. Then if you move ahead, previously we have just talking about the products and the tools, the systems, the IT products that we are now making use of, which is now being termed as the IT or the information and technology, rather than just the product. So it has all the tools, the CMS, the CRNs, the content management system, the client management system, and the relationship management system, the HR management system, so on and so forth. Whatever tool, the IT product or the service that you are making use of, either hardware or software or the cloud nature, that is now under the umbrella of the information and technology. And lastly, the process that I told you about, that there were 26 processes in ITIL version 3, which are now modified to 34 practices. Now within 34 practices of ITIL version 4, none have value streams and processes. So this is a new definition within the processor, that not only the other processors are being termed as the practices now, but they are in an additional of the value streams, which will pick up lately or now within these respect to how this is incorporated in ITIL4 and what is the impact of it on the service value streams. So proceeding on, we have the new and the different part of the ITIL4, that is the ITIL services value system. Basically, as you can see on the right hand side of the screen, to the end of the end-to-end point of the view is conveyed to the parties that are actually going ahead and making use of the services, and the ones that are providing the services. So that the expectations across the board are set at the same tone. So if you see this diagram from the continual improvement of the processes or within the market gaps or so on and so forth, it could be these scarcity of the product or services that comes up, or it can be driven by the consumers or the use of that service to demand as well. So whatever the nature of the of this input is, it can either be termed as an opportunity or it can be termed as a demand therein, and then it goes into the churn of the whole box, the whole cuboid that we have of the overlapping layers of this guiding principles and continual improvement at the end of it, and the inner layer of the governance and the practices, and then at the core of the of this activity we have this element of the service value chain, which all in all comes together, all 5 of them, and then deliver the value of the customers. Now you see within the service value chain, these 5 components of the guiding principle, governance, services value chain, practices, and the continual improvement comes together to deliver the value. So that is either driven by the opportunity or the demand that is forwarded by the service consumers. So let's see how the version 3 maps onto the version 4 in terms of the guiding principles. There were 9 guiding principles within the service, within the ITIL framework of the version 3. It was currently in place. These are not which are not separated, but part of the same system. The concepts are linked together within the practices. So the service value chain activity, so these all comes together as one when it comes to the deliverance of the value as a service. So previously we had we have our focus on the version ITIL version 4. We have to focus on the value, which we have the first one, which is clearly mapped on the new version as well. This defines that the end value that is to be delivered. So which should always be in focus when it comes to the deliverance, either by the service provider, the operational teams within the service provider, or the third-party suppliers or the partners that are in the organization that is providing those services and making use of it. So if you have the value in mind, obviously go ahead and deliver the value. The perception of value and the set of the requirements is set by the service consumer. So the users, the consumers, or the services, they will tell you that the value for that services for them is so. Once you know what it is, you can easily map your activities, your strategies and designs as per the focus on that value, so that the alignment is the alignment is there and it is delivered to the max optimal level. Secondly, we had designed for the experience, which is no longer the part of the new version and has been eliminated, so that this practice is not there altogether. So then we have the start where you are. This is also present in the ITIL4 framework. This guiding principle tells you about making use of all the facilities, the resource, the skill set, the hardware, the software, and the current system, the legacy system that you have in place, and build upon that. Instead of scratching that out and starting off with a new system or the new set of the facilities that will be used to deliver that service, making use of that what we have. So having a baseline assessment in place will obviously give out results better than having a new system in which is placed, which you are not familiar with, and it would require additional cost, time in terms, and risk in terms of training, the procurement, the delivery, setting up to the current architecture, so on and so forth. So to start where you are, the guiding principle is very important within this framework. Then you had progress iteratively in the version 3, which is also there is in version 4, but has been slightly altered to a progress iteratively with feedback. So progress iteratively with feedback that focuses on the fact that you need to go ahead and move to the next step or the next iteration of that service delivery with the feedback from the previous stage, from either you can say either the internal stakeholders, the external stakeholders, all parties that are involved in one way or the other in the value deliverance for that service. So that the next iteration is not a progression, iteration is not a progress and has an important improvement on the previous deliverables within the feedback incorporated with that. So the next activity we see is that within version 3 was observed directly. This is no longer the part of the version 4. You move on to the next activity, that is to be transparent. This has been slightly modified and collected together with the next activity as well, and now known as the collaborated with visibility is in version 4. So collaborate with visibility is to ensure all the parties involved in the service delivery of this value are working together in collaboration and the visibility to either the service review meetings, to the project steering committee meetings, or the daily status update on the progress of the project, or the services is provided to all the stakeholders, so that the expectations are set up accordingly. So they have the visibility of the next milestone and the hurdles, the bottlenecks, the critical items on the critical path, and what all risks they have impending for now, and what needs to be done, so that these smooth cycles of the service delivery are ensured. Then next, you have this work holistically, which is now turned around to think and work holistically in ITIL4. This means that when you are focusing on value in this, the first principle you are also looking at is the bigger picture. Now the business alignment is done within the IT services that you are providing, so that everybody within that scope of services has a clear idea as to what all needs to be done, and now the end value is to be driven through that process, and all of the parts of that service delivery are working in cohesive with each and everyone, and have the same idea in mind throughout that services value system. Proceeding on with keep it simple, it has one of the guiding principles in the version 3, which is now known as the keep it simple and practical. So keeping it simple and practical is very basic guiding principle that focuses on getting it done rather than perfecting it, and instead of having a complex task that stretches out to your timelines, you need to break it down. You need to break it down into smaller chunks, and then have a practical implementation of it in place, rather than drawing all the services delivery chunks and have the delivered timeline in space. So this is what these guiding principles focuses on. And lastly, the service guiding principle within version 4, which is a new guiding principle that optimizes and automates whatever processes, whatever the services system that you have in place, in order to move ahead to the final stage of the optimization of it, where you make use of some technology to automate the process. Let's say your service desk, you need to first ensure that whatever the existing process is, and that process is optimized to the fullest. There are no loopholes, there are no short outcomes within that, and it cannot be optimized to any further limit, and that is the ultimate optimization. Then you can map that into the automation bit, which is making use of the information and technology. Now you have the continual improvement approach. Now, as you see on this left hand side of the screen, this part will be also be continued onto the next presentations as well, and you will see in the future as well. So we have this previous version of how things were in the continual improvement approach, and the module that start off with the version that is basically what you envision for these services to deliver. What are the objectives in the terms of your businesses, and then you do the baseline assessment. That is where you are now. It's directly mapped into the start where you are, sort of the guidelines, and you can see the correlation between the two here as well. And once you have done the baseline assessment, then you set to the measurable targets and where you want to be. And once those targets are set, you proceed on to see how you get to that point through services and process improvement. And then once a central value of time has elapsed for that services activation to complete, then you do something, some measurements tricks to see if you have caught on there or not. So these 5 steps are the essence of the continual improvement approach module, and how these are mapped onto each other, so that you need to go ahead and keep the momentum going. That is the last bit of things, and seeing that next iteration needs to be added onto in terms of the 3-5 steps. So onto, as you can see on the right hand side top, this is the new change that have been process within this approach on the module. That is the pushing that to the primarily the business version, the objectives and the mission and the goals. For instance, you have a sales force of let's say 100 people, and you want to go ahead and improve on that so that you could have a better ROI, and you know what to do when there are another 50 people. So you do perform a baseline assessment. So you have set the vision that you need 50 more people to maintain some of the business objectives, and let's say you want to increase your profits by 50%. So that is a vision, or where we know now that you do a baseline assessment. For instance, you have 100 people that are delivering, let's say, $100,000. That is a baseline assessment. Where do you want to be? This is where you define these new targets in place. Let's say we need a hard 50% incremental. That is the spirit of the one that is 150,000. What do we need to do? Let's improve on these services, the sales force, and increase it by 50%. So we have instead of 100 people, now we have 150 people. Then the second last bit, that is to take action, that is for improvement action. So you hire 50 more people for the objective of getting 50,000 more in terms of the profit. You need to train them, you need to guide them, you need to give them a knowledge, you need to get them some hands-on training, whether it's indoor sales, outdoor sales, inbound or outbound, whatever the case. Maybe these are the actions that you need to take or to execute those improvement actions, which are not part of the previous module. So taking actions on the improvement plan is the execution step that was previously not part of the continual improvement approach in the version 3, but this is in version 4. So you know exactly what to do and how to get there. So there you do the evaluation of the metrics and the key performance of the indicators, that if you have got them there. For instance, you hired 50 more people training from the objectively, and then achieved, let's say, 30,000 more in terms of the profit, and you are still 20% short of what you had defined as a measurable target. So how do you keep the momentum going? How do you keep the momentum going? Do you hire 20 more people for that 20,000 deficits? Do you train those 50 people in some specific focused areas with a specialized? What do you do? That is the strategy within the continual improvement plan that would kick in there for the next iteration, or for instance, you might have set some unreasonable or implicit or you can say targets that are unreasonable targets in terms of the measurable, which you need to revisit and then ensure that these are done accordingly. Now the key part with this continual improvement approach, or the ITIL version 4, different from are up to the speed in terms of the relation between these four instances. That is the vision. What exactly comes under the vision? Let's say the business vision, mission, goals, and the objectives, so on and so forth. All these 6 steps, and then within the 7th overlapping step, that is how do we keep the momentum going. So what improvements need to be done? How do you need to move ahead? Do you need more people? Do you need more resources in terms of the facilities or the trainings? Or do you need to redefine your targets? Do you need to redefine your objectives in terms of keeping the measurable targets that you have defined? What do you need to do? This is something that only you can define as, and in going to part of which is the part of that you would need to focus, let's say, on your organization. Now let's proceed ahead and see what the service lifecycle is. The service lifecycle is a concept that ITIL version 3 was focusing on with the service strategy at the helm of it, driven by the service design transition, the service operation, and then the overlapping through the continual service improvement. As you can see on the top right corner of the slide, this is a new concept when it comes to the version 4 and would be explained much better with the service value chain. So as you can see on the screen, the service lifecycle have different parts that the service strategy that was driving all the other hogs, or instance this is a web service strategy is a far go to give, and you have an idea how this works, and these parts on the top of it of our services design, service transition, the service operation. So this is how it moves, and then overlapping throughout it is this you see how our planet orbits the circle. It's like that in terms of the visual and works. So this is how it was like a clockwork, and then the continual service improvement had overlapping to all of the phases, whether strategy, design, operations, transition. You can continue, you are in a continual improvement on the previous ones that you had in place, so that there is an additional value deliverance through that service in the next iteration of the delivery. Now that is what you have previously saw in the version 3, the service lifecycle, and this has now been changed into the service value chain. Now as we can see on the top right corner, there is a new bit in ITIL4, as I told you before, and this is the new bit for the ITIL version 4, and the service value chain that it consists of different activities within it, starting off with the planning and the improvement, engagement, design, in the transition of the builds in a degree, and support. So these are the basic 6 activities within the service value chain, and let's see how the previous service life cycles or are the steps of the service design and the separated strategy, separation strategy in the transition map on to these. So you can see on the screen this service strategy as the part of the planning and the improvement is mapped directly onto these 2 activities, that is the planning and improve. So that is how services strategy mapped. Moving on to the service design, which is directly mapped onto the design and the transition activity because of the obvious reason. Then the transition of the service transition also into the similar activity. Then the services operation is part of the delivery and the support of the products and the services, how these activities get onto these stages of the life cycles. When the services into the production or the support and the operations teams are taken, then taking care of it as a business and an unusual process, then the continual service improvement is there, that is in which is overlapping exchange of all media, of all the media in all stages of the services life cycles in at the very end, and the parameter of all these. Then we have this now let's see, as I explained briefly, is the introduction, or we have different practices. Now in the ITIL4 version 4, instead of the processes, let's say we had let's just see what the previous version had in terms of the 5 stages. The service strategy had a service portfolio management, which is no longer the part of the version 4 and is just now called portfolio management. Then we have this financial management. This practice is much very much intact. Then business relationship management in version 3 is now changed on to the relationship management in the version 4. Strategy management is intact and has no nothing changed, but the model management is no longer part of the version 4. Similarly, if we move on to the service design, we had the design coordination process, which is now just known as the design practices. Then the service catalog management remains as is. So does the service level, supplier availability, capacity, and the IT services continuity and the information security management. So within a service design, all remains the same apart from the design coordination, which is just a design management practice. Now proceeding on to the service transition, we no longer have the this transition planning and support change. Management remains the same way where our services assist and the configuration management has been divided into two services, assets management and the configuration management. Both are two different practices. Now similarly, release and the deployment management are two different practices in the version 4. Release management and the deployment management, knowledgeable management remains as is. That is no more change. Evaluation management in ITIL4 and the service validation and the testing remains the same as in new practice. Now on to the service operation, we have this incident problem in the event management, and this is there, whereas there is no access management within the scope of this version 4, and request fulfillment is just known as the request management practice in version 4. Lastly, on to the continual service improvement, we had 7 steps of the improvement practice processes within version 3, which are now known as just the improvement practices with version 4. Now proceeding on, I will see how these practices are informally aligned to the service value chain of service of the version 4, and how this will add value to the existing process and the new process of the ITIL4. So you have these different activities, for instance, the relationship management, supply management, service catalog management, and so this level management and the engaged activity of the service value chain, whereas the portfolio management, strategy management, risk, service, financial, workforce and the talent business analysis are mapped onto the planning. But proceeding on this similarly at the transition, the design and transition and the delivery and support, we have the architecture management, information security, availability, capacity, performance, service, continuous service design, information infrastructure and platform management. Now on to the planning, service value chain activity, we have different practices platform, that is architecture management, information security, availability, capacity, and performance, service, continuity, ease of the design infrastructures and the platform. Similarly on to the improvement, but that is the overlapping within the planning part, we have the change control, organization change management, service configuration management, service validation testing and deployment management. These are also mapped onto the other activities of the delivery and support. Along with plan and improve, we as well now onto the obtained and the build service value chain activity. We have two direct practice mapped onto this, that is the IT asset management and software development management and management, where on to the improvement part, we actually have the continual improvement knowledge management. You should maintain reporting and some other activities that overlaps between the improvement and the delivery and the support value chain activity, that are monitoring and event management services, requesting management services, service desk, incident management and problem management. So this is all we have for the ITIL overview a bit for now, and we are going to go ahead and start off with the next bit, just ensuring that you have a clear idea and the understanding of how the service value system is, what all the activities are incorporated within these especially the services value chain activities, the 6 service value chain activities, and the practice and the guiding principle. Because all these 3 won't be overlapping within each other and would be given you a better understanding and how the ITIL framework works in totality in each other inner working as well. So that is all for the ITIL overview.